casket was lowered into the ground, my father said this about me. "She doesn't need to know what it's worth. She wouldn't understand what to do with it." He wasn't talking about grief. He was talking about the $5 million my husband left me. I was still in my black dress. Cemetery dust still clung to the soles of my shoes. That same evening, I walked up to my parents' house in Newport, looking for comfort. Instead, I stood outside their front door and listened as they planned to have me declared mentally unstable so they could take control of every dollar my husband left behind. The forged paperwork, the doctor who had never examined me, the guardianship petition that would declare me mentally unstable. They didn't know I was there. They didn't know I was recording. And they had no idea that the grieving widow they thought was too fragile to handle money was about to dismantle their entire plan. If this story resonates with you, let me take you back to that Tuesday morning in October, the day I buried my husband. It rained the morning of Andrew Whitmore's funeral. Not a storm, just a thin, relentless drizzle that clung to your coat and refused to let go. The kind of rain that settles into your bones. The church in Newport was small. White clapboard siding, worn wooden pews, a modest steeple leaning slightly to one side. Andrew would have liked that. He never wanted spectacle. About 40 people came. His colleagues from the tech consulting firm in Providence, our neighbors from Thames Street, a few college friends who drove down from Connecticut. Naomi Clark, my best friend since 9th grade, sat beside me in the front row. She held my hand so tightly her knuckles turned pale. But my eyes kept drifting to the back of the sanctuary. 3 seats on the left, the ones I'd quietly saved in my mind for my parents and my sister Lila. They stayed empty. No coats tossed over them, no purses tucked underneath, no apologies. I checked my phone under the hymn book. No calls, no messages. Naomi leaned close and whispered, "Do you want me to reach out?" I shook my head. They know what day it is. The pastor spoke gently about Andrew, 38 years old, brilliant with numbers, soft-spoken, the kind of man who would fix your porch light without ever mentioning it. A heart condition no one caught in time. 2 weeks from the first complaint of chest pain to a casket. We'd been married 8 years. He handled the investments, the tax filings, the insurance policies. I handled everything else. The groceries, the appointments, the nights when he'd wake up at 3 a.m. clutching his chest and I'd sit beside him until the pain passed. He used to tell me, "B, I've got the numbers. You've got me." And that was our arrangement. That was enough. After the burial, I stood by the grave while the rain soaked through my coat. 40 people had shown up to say goodbye to my husband. Not one of them had shared my last name before I got married. I didn't know yet why my family hadn't come. I told myself they must have been overwhelmed. I even felt guilty for not reminding them. I had no idea they were at home, busy with something else entirely. The call came the next morning. I was still on the couch in yesterday's clothes when my phone rang. A Rhode Island number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Whitmore? This is Thomas Avery. I was your husband's estate attorney." Estate attorney? I didn't even know Andrew had one. "I'd like to meet with you today, if possible. There are documents that require your attention." I drove to Providence, to an old brick building near College Hill, brass nameplate, tall windows, the kind of place Andrew would have walked past without noticing. He never cared about appearances. Thomas Avery was in his early 50s, gray at the temples, wire-rimmed glasses resting low on his nose. He offered me water, then got straight to it. "Your husband executed a will 18 months ago. He named you sole beneficiary." He opened a folder and slid several documents across the desk. 3 rental properties in Rhode Island, one in Warwick, one in Pawtucket, one in Cranston. Combined market value, approximately $2.85 million. And a residential beachfront property in Narragansett, valued at roughly $1.65 million. Total estate value, just over $4.5 million. I read the numbers twice, then a third time. Andrew owned all of it outright. No mortgages. The rental units generated consistent annual income. Everything, every asset, transferred directly to me. I sat there trying to reconcile the man who drove a 12-year-old Subaru with the man who quietly built a multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio. Mr. Avery studied me carefully. Then he placed his business card on top of the folder. "Your husband prepared meticulously," he said. "He wanted you protected." He paused. "If anyone at all, pressures you regarding these assets, call me before you sign anything." It was an unusual warning. I thanked him and slipped the card into my coat pocket. When I left that office, I felt like Andrew was still looking out for me from somewhere just beyond reach. What I didn't understand yet was why Thomas Avery had sounded so cautious. I wouldn't understand that until later that evening. When I drove to my parents' house in Newport, still in the same black coat, eyes still raw. I drove there because I wanted to tell them about the will. I wanted to sit at the kitchen table where I grew up and hear my mother say something soft, something steady, like, "It's going to be okay, sweetheart." The porch light was on. I parked behind my father's truck and walked up the front steps. The screen door was latched, but the main door was slightly open, the way my mother always left it when the house got warm from cooking. I reached for the handle. Then I heard my name. "Beatrice doesn't need to know the details yet." My father's voice, low, firm, the way he sounds when he's leading a conversation he doesn't want interrupted. I stopped. My hand hovered inches from the screen. "Thomas Avery called me this afternoon," he continued. "Andrew left her 3 rental properties and the beach house in Narragansett." Silence. Then Lila's voice, quick, sharp. "How much?" "About $4.5 million. A longer pause. I could hear the mantel clock ticking through the door. Then Lila again. "She can't keep that money. She doesn't even know how to handle basic bills." My father made a low grunt, the kind that means agreement. I stood there on the porch, one hand still raised. The drizzle had stopped hours earlier, but I was trembling as if it hadn't. Inside that house were the only 3 people left in my family, and they were discussing my life like it was a financial asset. But the next sentence, my mother's, was the one that changed everything. Her voice slipped through the screen door, soft but precise. "Andrew dying is the best thing that's happened to this family. Now we finally have a way out." Sit with that sentence the way I had to. My husband. The man who brought my mother flowers every birthday, who cleaned my father's gutters each spring without being asked, had been gone just days. And she called it a blessing. My knees nearly gave out, but I stayed upright. I stayed quiet. My father continued as if nothing about that sentence was shocking. "I spoke with Dr. Hargrove today. He'll sign a certificate. Complicated grief, psychological trauma, inability to manage financial decisions. We file for guardianship." And Lila goes down as the appointed guardian. "I already contacted a real estate agent in Narragansett about the beach house," Lila added casually, like she was placing an order for takeout. My mother again. "Make sure the paperwork stays hidden. If Beatrice sees anything, the whole plan falls apart." I remained on that porch for another minute, maybe 2. My ears were ringing. My chest felt heavy, like concrete had been poured inside it. Then I did something I hadn't planned. I pulled out my phone, opened the voice recorder, and pressed record. I held it close to the crack in the door and let it capture everything. They kept talking. Details, timelines, who to call, how to keep me in the dark. After 2 more minutes, I pressed stop. I turned around, walked down the steps, got into my car, and drove away. I didn't knock. I didn't go inside. I didn't cry. I drove for 30 minutes in complete silence. No music, no tears. Just one question replaying in my mind. How long had they been looking at me and seeing a bank account instead of a daughter? I sat down at the kitchen table in the apartment Andrew and I had shared for 8 years. His coffee mug was still in the drying rack. Thomas Avery's business card lay in front of me, next to my phone. The recording still saved on it. At 11 that night, I called Naomi. She picked up on the second ring. She always does when it's me. "B, what happened?" I told her everything. The empty seats at the funeral, the meeting in Providence, the port. Every single sentence I heard through that screen door. Naomi didn't interrupt. She didn't gasp. She didn't swear. She just listened. That's what makes her dangerous. She listens the way attorneys do, carefully, catching every detail. When I finished, her voice changed. It went cold. Precise. "Beatrice, listen to me. Do not call your parents. Do not call Lila. First thing tomorrow, call Thomas Avery. Then call me. I know exactly what this is." Naomi is a paralegal at a real estate and estate law firm in Providence. She's spent 11 years around probate disputes, guardianship petitions, property litigation. She recognized what my family was doing before I even had the language for it. "What they're describing," she said, "using a doctor to certify you as mentally incapacitated without examining you, then filing for guardianship to control your assets, that's not family conflict. That's a felony. That's forgery. That's fraud. We treat it like one." I exhaled for what felt like the first time all day. "There's someone at the Rhode Island Attorney General's office I've worked with," she added. "A detective who specializes in financial crimes against vulnerable adults. His name is Victor Salazar. If we need him, and I think we will, I can make that call." I stared at Andrew's coffee mug across the table. He used to tell me I was stronger than I believed. I never believed him. But for the first time, I was starting to. The next morning at 9:15, my mother called. Her voice was warm, polished, perfectly rehearsed. "Sweetheart, I've been thinking about you all night. Why didn't you stop by yesterday? We waited for you." "We waited for you." I almost laughed. "I was exhausted, Mom. Maybe another time." "How about Sunday dinner? The whole family. Leela really wants to see you. Your father's been worried. Sick with worry." Worried. Sick. I kept my tone steady. Naomi had coached me. Act normal, don't tip them off, buy time. "Sure," I said. "Sunday works." "Good. We love you, sweetheart. You shouldn't be alone right now." I hung up and immediately called Thomas Avery. He answered on the first ring as if he'd been expecting me. "Mr. Avery, my father contacted you yesterday about my husband's estate. What exactly did he ask?" There was a brief pause. "He asked about the total value," Avery said. "He asked whether you were the sole beneficiary. And he asked, hypothetically, what would happen if you were declared legally incapacitated." My stomach dropped. "Mrs. Whitmore," he continued, "I shared nothing beyond what's already public record. But his line of questioning concerned me. That's why I made sure you had my card." Andrew's attorney had seen coming before I did. Thomas Avery's tone shifted, sharper now, urgent but controlled. "If your father files for guardianship and you fail to respond in time, a judge could issue a temporary order in as little as 14 days, he said. You need to move first. I'm filing a preemptive objection today." Then he gave me another name, Dr. Melissa Grant, board-certified psychiatrist, independent, 20 years in practice. "Schedule an evaluation this week," he told me. "If we have a legitimate psychiatric report confirming your full capacity, any petition based on a fraudulent certificate collapses immediately." I wrote down her number and called before lunch. The earliest appointment was Thursday. What I didn't know yet was that Lila had already made her own calls, and she wasn't waiting for the court. Thursday afternoon, Dr. Grant's office sat inside a converted Victorian near Providence's east side. Potted plants on the windowsill. No receptionist. She opened the door herself. The evaluation lasted 90 minutes. She asked about Andrew, about my daily routines, whether I was sleeping, eating, leaving the house. She asked about my childhood, about my parents. I answered honestly every question. She wrote steadily the entire time, without expression. At the end, she set her pen down and looked directly at me. "Mrs. Whitmore, you are grieving. That is human. It is not a disability. There is no evidence, none, of diminished cognitive function or inability to manage your affairs." She signed the report, stamped it, slid the original into a sealed envelope. "Keep this somewhere secure." I drove home feeling like I could breathe for the first time all week. A licensed psychiatrist with 2 decades of experience had just confirmed, in writing, what Andrew used to tell me. I was capable. I was of sound mind. I was enough. What I didn't know, what Naomi uncovered that same evening through a contact at Dr. Hargrove's clinic, was that my father had visited Dr. Leonard Hargrove that very same afternoon. Same day, same city, different outcome. Dr. Hargrove wasn't a psychiatrist. He was a family physician, and he had signed a certificate declaring that Beatrice Whitmore was suffering from severe grief disorder, with significant impairment in managing personal and financial affairs. He had never examined me, never scheduled an appointment, never once looked me in the eye. And here's the part that would matter most later. On that certificate, the line labeled "Date of Patient Examination" was left blank, because there had been no examination, just a signature and a favor between golf partners. 5 days later, Sunday evening, I stood once again on my parents' porch in Newport. This time, I knocked. My father opened the door with a smile I had never seen before, too wide, too practiced. He pulled out my chair at the dinner table. He poured my water. Henry Cooper had never poured anyone's water in 63 years. My mother had made chicken piccata, my favorite since I was 12. The house smelled like lemon and butter. Lila hugged me in the hallway. Her perfume was expensive. Her credit card debt was more expensive. We sat, we ate. My father guided the conversation the way a man parallel parks, slowly, carefully, adjusting every angle. "So, sweetheart," he began, "have you had a chance to go through Andrew's paperwork? Do you know what he left behind?" I chewed slowly. "The attorney is still handling most of it. I don't really understand everything yet." A look passed between my parents, quick, almost invisible, but I saw it. Henry leaned forward. "Finances can be complicated, Bea. Let your dad deal with the legal side. You've got enough on your plate." Hazel nodded. "He's right, honey. You need to focus on healing." Lila didn't say a word. She stared down at her phone. Halfway through dinner, I excused myself to use the restroom. On the way back, I passed my father's home office. The door was slightly ajar. On his desk, half hidden beneath a newspaper, sat a manila envelope stamped with the Kent County Court seal. I pulled out my phone, took a picture. 2 seconds. Then I returned to the table and finished my dinner. Sit there, watching 3 people I had known my entire life perform the role of a loving family. I kept thinking, how many dinners before this one had also been an act? How many times had I sat in that exact chair and missed every signal? Have you ever looked back at a moment with your family and realized it wasn't what you thought it was? I don't think I'm the only one. When I got home, I opened the photo. The return address was clear. Kent County Probate Court. The stamp across the front in Petition for Guardianship. They had already filed. Monday morning, I called Thomas Avery before my coffee even finished brewing. They filed, I said. I saw the envelope last night. Kent County Probate Court. He was silent for 3 seconds. I heard the faint clicking of keys. I'm looking at it now, he said. Henry Cooper, petitioner. Lila Cooper, proposed guardian. Attached exhibit, a medical certificate signed by Dr. Leonard Hargrove stating that you lack the mental capacity to manage your personal and financial affairs. Hearing it spoken in formal legal language, entered into a court system, assigned a case number, made it real in a way the porch conversation hadn't. This wasn't family gossip anymore. It was a court filing. The preliminary hearing is set 14 days from the filing date, Avery continued. That gives us until October 29th. If we don't respond before then, a judge could grant a temporary guardianship. Lila would have legal authority over your finances within the hour. 14 days. That was all that stood between me and losing control of everything Andrew had built. I'm filing our objection this morning, he said. Dr. Grant's report will be our primary exhibit. That alone should give the judge pause. I called Naomi next. Good, she said. Avery handles the civil side, but there's a criminal angle here too. That's where Detective Salazar comes in. I spoke with him yesterday. He wants to hear the recording, and he needs a certified copy of Hargrove's certificate. How do we get it? It was filed with the court. Salazar can request it officially. He said he'll have it within a week. A week. The clock was already ticking on 14 days, and we needed 7 of them just to confirm what I already knew, that Dr. Hargrove had signed a document about a patient he had never examined. 14 days. I could feel each one. The call came Wednesday, day 3 of 14. A woman from Coastal Ridge Property Management, the firm overseeing Andrew's Warwick property, asked to speak with me. Her voice was careful, almost scripted. Mrs. Whitmore, we received a request yesterday from a woman identifying herself as your legal guardian. She asked that all rental income be redirected to a new bank account. My hand tightened around the kitchen counter. What was her name? Lila Cooper. She provided a case number from Kent County Probate Court and stated the guardianship was already in effect. It wasn't. The hearing hadn't happened. No judge had signed anything. And yet, my sister had already contacted a property manager, claimed authority she did not have, and tried to reroute my income. I thanked the woman and asked her to take no action until she heard directly from my attorney. She agreed. I called Avery. Within the hour, he drafted a cease and desist letter to Coastal Ridge and forwarded the details to Detective Salazar. This matters, Avery said. She falsely represented herself as a court-appointed guardian to a financial entity. That's not just premature, that's identity fraud. Naomi texted me that evening. Lila just handed us another charge on a silver platter. That night, my mother called again. Warm, gentle, perfectly timed. Honey, I heard you've been difficult about the apartment situation. Why are you making this so hard? We're just trying to help. Difficult. In the past 2 weeks, I had been labeled incapable, unstable, now difficult. I kept my voice neutral. I'm not being difficult, Mom. I just want to understand everything before I make decisions. There was the faintest shift in her tone. Well, don't take too long. She hung up first. The following afternoon, my father showed up at my apartment. No warning, just a knock. He stood there holding 2 coffees and a paper bag from a bakery downtown. Thought I'd check on my girl, he said, stepping inside before I decided whether to let him. He sat at the kitchen table, Andrew's table, and made small talk for exactly 10 minutes. The weather, the neighbor's dog, a Patriots trade he didn't actually care about. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a thin stack of papers. Listen, sweetheart, I had an attorney draft this. Just a temporary power of attorney, so I can handle the real estate paperwork for you. Property taxes are due, insurance renewals, things you shouldn't have to deal with right now. He slid the papers across the table. A blue pen rested neatly on top. I looked down. The heading read, Durable General Power of Attorney. Not temporary, not limited, general. It would give Henry Cooper complete authority over every financial decision in my life. Dad, I said carefully, I need to read this first. Give me a few days. His jaw tightened. B. Time matters. There are deadlines. Andrew always told me to read before I sign, I replied. I think I should honor that. He couldn't argue with advice from a dead man, not openly. He left the papers on the table and walked out without finishing his coffee. I photographed every page and sent them to Thomas Avery. His response came within the hour. Do not sign. Thomas Avery's reply was blunt. This is a general power of attorney with no restrictions. If you execute this, your father could sell every property by tomorrow morning. Also, the attorney who drafted it, Jonathan Pierce, is a former business partner of your father's. This was coordinated. The blue pen was still resting on top of the papers, uncapped, waiting, ready for me to make the biggest mistake of my life. I capped it and slid it into a drawer. Friday night, Naomi came over with her laptop and a yellow legal pad filled with notes. Sit down, she said. I pulled everything I could from public records. It's worse than we thought. She turned the screen toward me. Henry Cooper, second mortgage on the Newport house. Outstanding balance, $410,000. Federal tax lien filed 8 months ago, $112,000. 2 delinquent credit lines. A collections notice from a contractor he never paid for a roof repair. He's 5 months behind on the mortgage, Naomi said. The bank sent a notice of default in August. She flipped to the next page. Lila Cooper, 4 credit cards, 3 frozen, 1 in collections. Total revolving debt, $205,000. 2 civil suits from creditors in the past 3 years. An eviction filing in Providence that was settled out of court. Your sister's been living beyond her means for years, Naomi said. And your mother co-signed on the Newport house. If Henry loses it, Hazel goes down with him. I stared at the numbers. More than $700,000 in combined debt. My family was drowning. Andrew's estate was worth $4.5 million. The math wasn't complicated. I was their lifeboat. Naomi closed the laptop. They're not doing this because they think you can't manage money, she said quietly. They're doing it because they're desperate. You're the only way out. I sat there for a long time staring at the kitchen table. Andrew's table, where he used to spread out spreadsheets and quietly build something that would outlast him. He never told me about their debt. He never told me a lot of things, but he made sure every asset was in my name. Only mine. Now I understood why. Saturday, day 6. The text messages started. First from a college friend, Marissa. B, Lila called me yesterday. She said you haven't been eating, that you're not leaving the house, that you're pushing everyone away. She sounded really worried. Are you okay? Then from my aunt in Connecticut. Sweetheart, your mother says you're really struggling. I want to come help. Please let us. Then from a distant cousin I barely knew. Praying for you. Your family loves you so much. One by one, Lila was building a story. Not to me, around me. A carefully planted narrative spreading through every contact she could reach. Beatrice is falling apart. Beatrice can't function. Beatrice needs someone to step in. And when the court date came, all those people would remember hearing the same version. I wanted to call every single one of them. I wanted to say, I'm fine. I'm standing in my kitchen making pasta. I went for a run this morning. Naomi stopped me. If you start calling everyone to defend yourself, it looks exactly like what Lila described. Someone frantic, out of control. Let your actions speak, not your panic. I set my phone down. It was the hardest thing I'd done all week. Then my closest college friend, Rachel, called directly. B, I didn't believe a word of it, she said. But you should know something. She hesitated. Leela asked if I knew your bank account number. She said she needed it to help manage your bills. I closed my eyes. She wasn't just attacking my reputation. She wanted my bank information, my contacts, my credibility. Lila wasn't trying to win a legal argument. She was trying to dismantle my life, so that when a judge looked at me, all he would see was a woman with nothing left. But Rachel gave her nothing, and that mattered more than Lila would ever understand. Day 8. Naomi drove me to the Rhode Island Attorney General's satellite office in Warwick. Detective Victor Salazar met us in a small conference room, metal table, plain walls, no decoration. He closed the door behind him. Detective Victor Salazar looked about 45. Broad shoulders, calm eyes. The kind of man who asks questions the way a surgeon makes incisions. Precise, measured, never rushed. Mrs. Whitmore, he said, walk me through it from the beginning. So I did. The funeral, the porch, the recording, Dr. Hargrove, the power of attorney, Lila's call to Coastal Ridge. He took notes without looking up. When I finished, he said, play the recording. I placed my phone on the metal table and pressed play. My father's voice filled the room first, then my mother's, then Lila's. Salazar didn't move while it played. When it ended, he capped his pen and looked at me. This gives us reasonable grounds to open an investigation, he said. But the key is Dr. Hargrove's certificate. If I can prove he signed it without examining you, that's forgery. And filing it with the court makes it fraud upon the court. Well, how do we get it? I asked. It was attached as an exhibit to the guardianship petition. I've already requested a certified copy from the court clerk. We should have it in 5 to 7 days. Naomi leaned forward. And Lila impersonating a guardian to redirect rental income? Identity fraud, Salazar replied. Separate charge. We're documenting it. Then he looked directly at me. I've seen families do terrible things for money. But forging medical documentation to strip someone of their legal rights? That's not family conflict. That's a crime, and I will treat it like one. He stood. In the meantime, don't confront them. Don't change your routine. Let them believe everything is moving according to their plan. We shook hands. His grip was firm, steady, like a promise without words. 5 to 7 days. The clock didn't stop. Day 10. My mother invited me to lunch, just the two of us, a seafood restaurant in Bristol overlooking the harbor. We used to go there when I was little. back when things felt simpler. Or maybe when I thought they were. She looked thinner than I remembered. Tired. When she hugged me, she held on a second longer than necessary. We ordered. She talked about the weather, the new neighbors, a recipe she'd clipped from a magazine, safe topics. Then the tears came. "I'm sorry I wasn't at the funeral," she said, her voice breaking. "I was scared. I saw how much you were hurting, and I didn't know what to say. I'm a terrible mother." Her tears were real. I believe that. What I didn't believe was the reason behind them. She dabbed her eyes and shifted gears smoothly. "Sweetheart, $4.5 million is a huge responsibility. I don't want anyone taking advantage of you. Anyone." She emphasized that word. "Have you thought about letting Lila help manage some of it? She's always been good with numbers." Lila. Good with numbers. The woman with over $200,000 in credit card debt. I almost broke character. Almost. "I'll think about it," I said. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Your father has everything prepared. You just need to sign one small document." When the check arrived, she reached for her wallet. The waitress returned 30 seconds later, lowering her voice. "I'm sorry, ma'am. It's been declined." My mother's face drained of color. "It must be the machine." I paid in cash. I didn't say a word, but I understood. Her card was declined. The house was underwater, and the only plan she had was sitting across from her, refusing to sign. Her tears were genuine, but the love behind them came with a price tag. Day 12. Detective Salazar called at 7 a.m. "I have Hargrove's certificate," he said, "and it's exactly what we expected." I sat on the edge of my bed and listened. The signature line is filled. Leonard Hargrove, MD. Diagnosis: severe grief disorder with marked impairment of financial and personal decision-making. He paused, but the line for date of patient examination? Blank. The method of evaluation? Blank. I exhaled. I pulled Dr. Hargrove's appointment records for the day he signed it. Your name doesn't appear anywhere, not as Beatrice Whitmore, not as Beatrice Cooper, no entry, no chart, no file. He let that settle. He signed a legal medical document certifying your incapacity without ever being in the same room as you. That's forgery. And because it was submitted to the court as part of a guardianship petition, it's fraud upon the court. A felony. "What happens now?" I asked. "I'm obtaining a warrant for Hargrove's arrest this morning. Once he's in custody, I expect him to cooperate. Doctors usually do when their license is on the line. When he talks, he'll confirm who asked him to sign, and that gives us the chain to your father, your mother, and your sister." I stood and walked to the window. Outside, the street was quiet. A school bus rolled past. "Detective," I said, "when you go to my parents' house, I want to be there." There was a long pause on the other end. "Are you sure?" "I need to see their faces," I said, "and they need to see mine." There was a pause. Then Detective Salazar agreed. Sunday morning, 10 a.m., at my parents' house in Newport. 2 more days. I already knew what I would wear, the same black coat I wore to Andrew's funeral. Not for mourning this time, for closing something. Day 13. My father called that evening. The tone was different. No sweetness. No performance. "Beatrice," he said. "Not sweetheart, not honey, just my name. I don't know who's been filling your head, but this little rebellion needs to stop. You need to sign the power of attorney." "No," I said. "You already filed with the court. The hearing is Monday, You're going to embarrass this family in front of a judge. I know you filed, Dad. My attorney told me. Silence. I could hear him breathing. So you hired a lawyer, he said. You think you know what you're doing? I think this conversation should end here. You've never managed a single thing in your life, he snapped. His voice cracked, not with sadness, with anger. Andrew handled everything. The bills, the taxes, the accounts, all of it. And now you think you can handle $4.5 million? You can't even... Dad. My voice stayed level, flat as a wall. If you were trying to help me, you wouldn't need a doctor to say I'm unstable. Dead silence. 3 full seconds. That doctor examined you. No, I said. He didn't, and we both know it. He hung up. I sat on the couch and stared at my hands. They were shaking, not from fear, from the kind of anger that settles at the base of your spine and burns quietly. Later, I realized something. I had been recording the call. Not intentionally at first. I had hit record out of habit when I saw his name flash across the screen, focused on staying calm, and forgotten it was running. Rhode Island is a one-party consent state. The recording was legal, and my father had just admitted on tape that he filed the petition, that he expected me to sign. Tomorrow was Sunday. One more sleep until it ended. Saturday night, the apartment felt quiet in a way that didn't feel temporary. I sat on the closet floor, the place that still smelled faintly like Andrew, and pulled down the small fireproof box from the top shelf. Inside were our marriage certificate, his life insurance documents, the deed summaries Avery had given me, and at the bottom, a sealed envelope with my name in Andrew's handwriting. I'd found it the week after he died. I hadn't opened it. I wasn't ready. Tonight, I was. The letter was 1 page, blue ink, his handwriting small and tight, like he was trying to fit too much into too little space. B, if you're reading this, I'm sorry I couldn't stay longer, but I need you to know something I should have said more often. You are stronger than you think. You've always been strong. You just never had permission to believe it. Not from your parents, not from anyone. So here it is in writing. I believe in you. I always did. Andrew. I folded the letter and pressed it to my chest. And I cried. Not the controlled kind, not the polite tears you shed at funerals. The kind that comes from somewhere deep, raw and heaving. Andrew wrote that knowing his heart was failing, knowing I would need it, knowing exactly who might come for me once he was gone. I cried for 20 minutes. Then I washed my face. I placed the letter in the inside pocket of my coat, and I called Naomi. Tomorrow, I said. I'm ready. Salazar will be there at 10. Avery will be there at 10. I'll be there at 9:30. And there was a quiet pause. Thank you, I added, for believing me when no one else did. That's what the good ones do, she said softly. We show up. I set my alarm for 6. I planned to arrive before anyone else. I wanted to be the one who knocked. Sunday morning, clear sky, no rain. I pulled into my parents' driveway at 8. Same cracked asphalt, same rusted basketball hoop from the 90s. I sat in the car for 2 full minutes, hands on the steering wheel, breathing. Then I stepped out. Black coat, hair pulled back, no makeup. Andrew's letter in my left pocket, my phone in my right. I knocked. My father opened the door in a flannel shirt and slippers. His eyebrows lifted. Beatrice? It's 8 in the morning. What are you? I need to talk to all of you, I said. All 3 of you. Before this goes any further. He studied my face. Whatever he saw there, he stepped aside. The house smelled like old coffee and stale toast. My mother stood at the kitchen counter in her bathrobe, pouring cream into a mug. Lila was curled up on the sofa under a blanket, scrolling through her phone. They both looked up when I walked in. Hazel smiled, automatic, mechanical. "Sweetheart, what a surprise!" Lila didn't smile. She watched me the way a cat watches a door. I sat in the armchair across from the sofa, the same chair where I used to sit on Saturday mornings watching cartoons. Now I was looking at 3 people who had conspired to erase me from my own life. "I want to hear it from you," I said. "All of it. What the plan is, what you think is best for me." My father lowered himself into the chair opposite mine, shoulders squared. This was his ground. "Fine," he said. "We've been trying to explain this to you. This is about protecting your future, the estate, the properties. Your mother and I only want what's best." Hazel nodded. Lila stayed silent. I let him talk, about responsibility, about family, about how financial decisions were too much for someone in my condition. When he finished, I asked one question. "When was the last time you saw Dr. Hargrove, Dad?" His face froze, mid-breath, mid-sentence, mid-lie. And then the doorbell rang. He looked at me. I didn't look away. The bell rang again. Henry stood and walked to the door. When he opened it, Detective Victor Salazar stood on the porch in a dark blazer, badge clipped to his belt. Behind him was Thomas Avery in a charcoal suit, and Naomi Clark holding a manila folder. "Mr. Henry Cooper," Salazar said evenly. "I'm Detective Victor Salazar with the Rhode Island Attorney General's office. May we come in?" My father opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He stepped back. They entered the living room. Hazel stood up so quickly she knocked her coffee mug off the counter. It shattered across the tile. No one moved to clean it up. Lila dropped her blanket. Her phone slipped between the couch cushions. Salazar stepped into the center of the room the way someone steps onto a stage. "I'm here regarding a petition for guardianship filed with Kent County Probate Court by you, Mr. Cooper, on behalf of your daughter, Beatrice Whitmore." "That's a private family matter," my father said. "When the medical certificate attached to that petition is fraudulent," Salazar replied, "it becomes a criminal matter." The room didn't just go quiet. It went heavy. Salazar removed a clear document sleeve from his jacket and held up a copy of Dr. Leonard Hargrove's certificate. "This document declares your daughter mentally incapacitated. However, Dr. Hargrove never examined her. The date of patient examination field is blank. His appointment log shows no record of her, no chart, no file." Hazel sank back onto her stool. Lila's mouth fell open. "Doctor, Hargrove was taken into custody at 7 a.m. this morning," Salazar continued. "He has been cooperative." His recorded statement was reviewed by the prosecutor's office and presented to a judge within hours. Arrest warrants were signed shortly thereafter. He let that word hang. My father's face drained of color all at once. He knew what cooperative meant. It meant Hargrove had talked. To his credit, Henry tried. "Whatever he told you, he misunderstood," he said quickly. "I asked him for a general assessment. I never told him to—" "Mr. Cooper," Salazar interrupted, his voice still calm. "Dr. Hargrove states that you personally requested he sign a certificate of incapacity without conducting an examination. He states your wife, Hazel Cooper, provided the diagnostic language, and he states your daughter, Lila Cooper, was aware of and participated in the plan." Hazel made a sound, half sob, half gasp, and covered her mouth. Lila jumped to her feet. "I didn't know about the doctor," she said. "This was Dad's idea. I had nothing to do with that. Henry turned on her instantly. You called the realtor before we even had the paperwork. You called the property manager pretending to be her guardian because you told me to. They turned on each other in less than 10 seconds. Right there in front of a detective, an attorney, and me. I stood. The room stilled. Everyone looked at me. My father mid-accusation, my mother mid-sob, my sister mid-defense. Salazar, Avery, Naomi. I spoke quietly, the way you speak when you want every word to land. I heard everything, I said. The night of Andrew's funeral, I stood outside that door. I pointed toward the front entrance, 5 feet away. I heard Dad say Dr. Hargrove would sign the certificate. I heard Lila say she'd already called a realtor about the Narragansett house. And then I looked at my mother. And I heard Mom say, I looked straight at my mother. You said Andrew dying was the best thing that's happened to this family. Hazel's face collapsed in on itself. Beatrice, I didn't mean, you said it, I replied. Word for word. And I recorded it. No one moved. No one breathed. The broken coffee mug was still scattered across the kitchen tile, and the silence was louder than anything they had ever said. I'm not here for revenge, I said quietly. I'm here to tell you I heard you. I know what you did. And I choose not to forgive. Detective Salazar gave a small nod toward the front door. 2 uniformed officers stepped inside. They had been waiting on the porch the entire time. Henry Cooper, Salazar said, his tone calm and procedural. You are under arrest for fraud upon the court, forgery of medical documents, and conspiracy to misappropriate assets through fraudulent guardianship proceedings. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. My father didn't struggle when they placed the cuffs on him. He looked at me once, not angry, almost stunned. Like he had walked into a house he believed he owned and found every lock changed. Beatrice, he said, you can't do this to your father. I didn't answer. Hazel was next. She didn't resist either. Her wrists were so thin, the officer had to tighten the cuffs twice. Tears slid down her face in 2 clean lines. Baby girl, I'm sorry. I was desperate. You have to understand. I held her gaze. Desperation doesn't give you the right to declare me mentally unfit, Mom. She had nothing left to say. Then Salazar turned to Lila. Lila Cooper, you are under arrest for identity fraud, misrepresentation of court-appointed authority to a financial entity, and attempted theft by deception. Her knees buckled. She grabbed the arm of the sofa. Bea, please, I didn't... I said nothing. I didn't need to. They led all 3 of them out the front door and into separate patrol cars. Across the street, Mrs. Kowalski stood frozen on her lawn, watering can suspended mid-air. The neighbors' kids watched through their screen door. A mail truck slowed, then kept moving. Inside, the house felt hollow. Just me, Naomi, Thomas Avery, and the smell of cold coffee and broken porcelain. Naomi placed her hand on my shoulder. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. She drove. I sat in the passenger seat, hands folded in my lap, staring ahead. We didn't speak for 15 minutes. No radio, just the quiet hum of the road. The world outside the windshield kept moving as if nothing had shifted. Finally, I said it. I just sent my parents to jail. Naomi didn't hesitate. No, they sent themselves. I leaned my head against the window. The glass was cold. You know what I keep thinking about? I said. When I was 6, Dad taught me how to ride a bike in that driveway. He held the back of the seat and ran beside me until I could balance on my own. He was laughing. I remember his laugh. Naomi glanced at me but didn't interrupt. Same hands, I whispered. The same hands that held that bike seat signed a petition to take away my rights. She reached over and squeezed my arm once, then returned both hands to the steering wheel. When we pulled up to my apartment, she turned off the engine. You don't have to be strong tonight, she said softly. You just did one of the hardest things a person can do. If you need to fall apart, tonight's the night. I looked at her. I've been falling apart for 3 weeks, I said. I think tonight I just want to sleep. She nodded. I'll check on you in the morning. I walked inside. The apartment looked exactly the same. Andrew's coffee mug still in the drying rack, the power of attorney papers still on the table, the blue pen tucked away in the drawer. Everything in place, everything unchanged, except me. And there was no going back from that. 2 weeks later, Thomas Avery called with an update. Henry Cooper had been formally indicted on 3 counts: fraud upon the court, criminal forgery, conspiracy to misappropriate assets through fraudulent guardianship proceedings. Henry posted bail, $50,000, using the Newport house as collateral, the same house that already carried 2 mortgages. Hazel was indicted on 2 counts, conspiracy and accessory to fraud. She was released on her own recognizance, but barred from contacting me by court order. No calls, no texts, no messages through third parties. Lila was charged with identity fraud and attempted theft by deception. Her passport was surrendered. She was prohibited from leaving Rhode Island pending trial. Dr. Leonard Hargrove had his medical license suspended, while the Board of Medical Licensure conducted a full review. He was formally charged with criminal forgery. He was cooperating with the prosecution in exchange for a possible reduced sentence. The guardianship petition was dismissed with prejudice, permanently. No refiling. The judge's written order cited clear and compelling evidence of fraudulent medical certification and called the filing an abuse of the guardianship process. I was confirmed as the sole legal owner of all 4 properties, no conditions, no oversight, no guardian. Just me. Thomas Avery mentioned one more detail. Jonathan Pierce, the attorney who drafted the power of attorney my father brought to my apartment, was under investigation by the state bar for his role in the scheme. You're clear, Mrs. Whitmore, Avery said. Legally, financially, entirely. Your husband made sure of that. And you finished what he started. I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the wall for a long time. Not planning, not thinking, just sitting in a silence that, for the first time in weeks, didn't feel dangerous. 3 weeks later, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. I almost let it go to voicemail. I wish I had. Beatrice? My mother's voice sounded thin, fragile, like porcelain glued back together too many times. I know I'm not supposed to call, I know, but please, just 30 seconds. I should have hung up. I didn't. Your father's going to lose the house, she said. The bank won't extend the loan. I don't know where I'm going to live, Beatrice. I don't know what happens to me. I stood at the kitchen window, watching the oak branches move against a gray sky. Mom, I said evenly, you're calling from a blocked number. You're violating a court order right now. I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. We were desperate. You were desperate, I said, so you tried to have me declared mentally unfit. You wanted a doctor to sign a paper saying I couldn't think for myself, and Lila would have sold everything Andrew left me. The rentals, the Narragansett house, all of it. I would have been locked in a guardianship, unable to make a single decision about my own life. I paused. Did you ever think about what would have happened to me? Silence. Just her breathing. I don't hate you, I said, but I don't trust you, and I won't let you close enough to make me question my own mind again. She cried softly, controlled, the kind of crying that knows it is already lost. Don't call again, I said, and I hung up. Then I called Thomas Avery and reported the violation. I didn't feel powerful. I felt like someone who had amputated something necessary and was learning how to walk without it. But I was walking. That was the point. Over the next few days, I began undoing the narrative Lila had built. Short emails, clear language, no drama. Hi, Marissa. I wanted to let you know I'm doing well. I have legal counsel handling my affairs, and the situation Lila described was not accurate. I appreciate your concern. Aunt Carol, thank you for checking in. I'm okay. It's been difficult, but I'm getting the right kind of help. Love you. I sent 7 messages like that. I didn't mention arrests. I didn't explain the charges. I didn't argue point by point. I just showed up, coherent, steady, whole, and let that be the answer. Rachel called that afternoon. B, I knew from the second Lila opened her mouth that it was nonsense. I'm glad you're okay. Aunt Carol called the next morning. Sweetheart, I never believed that girl. She's been bending the truth since she was 12. You know that. We all know that. Not everyone had been fooled. Some people saw through it from the beginning. They just needed proof that I was still standing. That Friday, I drove to Narragansett alone. The house was smaller than I'd imagined. Pale blue shingles, white trim, a wraparound porch facing the Atlantic. The property manager had left the heat running. The floors were clean. The house was quiet. Outside, the Atlantic kept doing what it always does. Rolling in, pulling back, indifferent to everything. I stood on the porch with Andrew's letter in my hand. The wind pressed my coat against my ribs. I read his words again. You are stronger than you think. You've always been strong. You just never had permission to believe it. When I folded the letter this time, something had shifted. This time, I believed him. 6 months later, I was living in the Narragansett house full-time. The move wasn't dramatic. I packed up the Providence apartment over 2 weekends, hired a small moving company, and closed the door without looking back. Andrew's coffee mug came with me. So did the fireproof box. The power of attorney papers went through a shredder. I enrolled in a financial literacy certificate program through a community college in Hyannis. 12 weeks of balance sheets, tax filings, property management fundamentals. The things Andrew used to handle. The things I was learning to handle myself. Thomas Avery connected me with a reputable property management firm. They took over the 3 rental properties, tenant screening, maintenance, rent collection. I reviewed the monthly statements. I asked questions. I understood the answers. For the first time in my adult life, I knew exactly where my money was and what it was doing. In March, I accepted a part-time position at a nonprofit in Falmouth called Harbor Light, an organization that supports young widows rebuilding their lives after loss. I didn't need the paycheck. I needed the purpose. I knew what it felt like to lose everything in a single week, and to realize no one was standing behind you. Naomi visited once a month. We'd sit on the porch with a glass of wine and watch the waves turn gold at sunset. She never said, "I told you so." She just showed up. That's what the good ones do. The sentencing came the following spring. Henry received 18 months in state custody. Hazel was sentenced to 12 months of probation and 200 hours of community service. Lila served 6 months in county jail, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. I didn't attend the hearing. I didn't need to hear another word from that courtroom. The ocean was louder, and it had better things to say. I don't speak to my father. I don't speak to my mother. I don't speak to Lila. That isn't anger. It's architecture. I built a wall where there used to be a door, and I'm not searching for the blueprint to reopen it. Henry sent a letter from the state correctional facility. I recognized his handwriting immediately, the same tight, slanted script he used on birthday cards. I held the envelope for 10 seconds. Then I wrote "Return to Sender" across the front and dropped it back in the mailbox. Lila tried going through Rachel, a voicemail. "Tell B I'm sorry. Tell her I'll do anything." Rachel forwarded it. I listened once, then I deleted it. Not out of cruelty, but because keeping it would have meant leaving a thread, and threads get pulled. People ask me if I've forgiven them. Friends, co-workers at Harbor Light, even my therapist gently during our 3rd session. Here's what I've learned. Forgiveness is putting down the weight. It's choosing not to carry their choices on your back every morning. I'm working on that part. Some days are easier than others. But boundaries are different. Boundaries aren't about feelings. They're about safety. Forgiveness is internal, between me and the weight. Boundaries are external, between me and the people who put the weight there. I will not unlock the door. Not for apologies, not for tears, not for blood. Andrew wrote something in that letter that I returned to on the hard days. You've always been strong. You just never had permission to believe it. He was right. But I would add one more thing. I don't need permission anymore. Not from him, not from them, not from anyone. This morning, I woke up at 6, made coffee, stepped out onto the porch. The ocean was doing what it always does. The same thing it did yesterday, and the day before, and 100 years ago. Rolling in, pulling back, asking no one for permission. There's no one at my door asking me to sign anything. No one on the phone telling me I'm not capable. No one in the next room whispering about how to take what's mine while I'm still standing at a graveside. Andrew left me 4 walls and a roof, 3 rental properties, a house by the sea. What I want you to take from my story isn't the arrests, the court dates, or even the betrayal. It's this. Sometimes the most dangerous lie you can believe is that you're not capable. For years, I let other people define my strength. I let them handle the numbers, make the decisions, speak with authority while I stood quietly beside them. And when they tried to take everything from me, they didn't just target my money. They targeted my confidence, my voice, my right to decide for myself. That's what control looks like. It doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers that you're too fragile, too emotional, too inexperienced to stand alone. But grief is not weakness. Trust is not stupidity. And asking for help is not the same as surrendering your power. I learned that boundaries are not cruelty. They are protection. And choosing not to forgive someone who tried to erase you doesn't make you bitter. It makes you safe. If you are in a situation where someone is telling you that you're not enough, I hope you pause and ask, who benefits from me believing that? You deserve safety. You deserve clarity. And you deserve to make decisions about your own life. No one gets to take that from you. If this story meant something to you, if even one part of it felt familiar, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to draw a boundary with someone you once trusted? Have you ever chosen peace over permission? I read more than you think, And your stories matter here. If you believe that strength isn't loud, that it's quiet, steady, and built day by day, press like so. This story can reach someone who needs it. Share it with a friend, a sister, anyone who's being told they're not enough. Sometimes the right story at the right time can change everything. And if you want more stories about resilience, about reclaiming power, about choosing self-respect over silence, for courage, for the reminder that you are not alone.